And then I thought you would find these two advertisements for cigarettes interesting. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. It's just, this was a ubiquitous advertisement. And so it's just odd. This is like the Twilight Zone kind of experience where it's hard to explain. But in fact, it's not difficult to explain at all. The basic scientific link between smoking and cancer had been established in the early 1940s. So how do the cigarette companies respond? By obfuscating the question. First, claiming that the research was not conclusive, which of course was correct because it was still relatively preliminary. And then promoting the idea that medical men, scientific men, themselves like to smoke. And if they did, there can't be anything wrong with it. They were able, through this kind of tactic, to delay the day of reckoning for them until the 1970s, a good 30 years of simply denying and confusing. It's actually a very tried and true tactic that probably has some relevancy for today. Medical authorities know this one is superior. Philip Morris. So what are you supposed to think? You don't know. You're you're the sort of average American who's, you don't have the expertise. You read something in the newspaper that says, oh, maybe there's some connection, and then you see things like this. Do you stop smoking? Probably not. And one of the, as I mentioned last time, there's a clear move by the government and or at least by the White House and its allies in the government, and by liberals in the North and the West, to address the question of the racial regime in the United States, the racial dictatorship that existed. I'm using language that actually comes from Life magazine. And the question was, how is the United States going to become a racial democracy that will match its economic and political democracy? The National Council of Churches makes a declaration. This is the organization of the mainstream Protestant churches, that one of the main lessons of the war has to be that dictatorship is based on hatred of other people, and that it is imperative for the future of humanity that the United States address its racial problems. This actually becomes a significant factor in the development of the evangelical movement, because conservative Protestant denominations reject this conclusion and feel that the embrace of integration is simply social engineering that has nothing to do with the main goals of Christianity, of the Christian faith. That a Christian should learn to accept the social position into which they've been thrown, rather than strive to reform society. So one of the major splits of the second half of the 20th century will emerge as a result of how two different Protestant theologians understand the role of racial discrimination in the United States and its relationship to what people had seen going on in Germany. the Ford Foundation invited a Swedish sociologist, Gunnar Myrdal, Myrdal, to come to the United States during the war and to study race relations. He wrote a report called, which was published in 1944 with the title An American Dilemma, which became a big bestseller, which is amazing because it's not really very interesting to read, and it's 1,000 pages long. And his argument is basically simple. The dilemma is that the American creed of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all men are created equal, is of powerful importance to most Americans, and yet it's contradicted by their clinging to outmoded ideas of racial difference. And so that racial customs and Americanism are in conflict, and that conflict is going to have to be resolved. The repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which included the giving Chinese nationals in the United States the same citizenship, same naturalization rights that other immigrants had, was one step in that process. Congress then passed a bill which allowed war brides from Asia to become U.S. citizens. And then in 1952, the McCarran Act, the McCarran Act, on the one hand, authorized the construction of concentration camps for people opposing the U.S. government and if there were hostilities. On the other hand, it eliminated the discriminations against Asian immigrants, extending citizenship and naturalization rights to Japanese, Koreans, Filipinos, etc. Particularly in the North and the West, there was research done on how schools could create a new multiracial, integrated citizenry. One of the things that came out of this, research done at the School of Ed at UCLA, showed that whenever children were asked to compare racial groups or ethnic groups, they put them in a hierarchy. But if you asked them to talk about a group one at a time, they inevitably viewed the group in highly positive terms. So that if you wanted to address stereotypes, what you should do is start focusing on the contributions of the different heritages one at a time. So Black History Month becomes a part of American education in the late 40s, which was matched by other kinds of activities. So I wanted to show you a film made by the New York Board of Education about its efforts to, I won't show you the whole thing because it's 25 minutes long, but it illustrates its efforts to create a new kind of racially open, racially mixed America. It's kind of a corny film. So, not kind of, it is absolutely.
Friends, I am William Johnson, Superintendent of Schools of the City of New York. The film you are about to see tells the story of how the schools and community in one school district are working together to build brotherhood. Their intervisitation program involves children and adults of different racial and cultural backgrounds. This partnership of all races, creeds, and colors has made an entire school community a happier place in which to work and to live.
New York has stood for several hundred years and still stands as the gateway to freedom and opportunity for thousands who seek to rebuild their lives in a land where man has work and labor has dignity.
Who among you can give some of the reasons why people left their native lands to come to the United States of America?
Many came because they wanted to be free to worship as they chose. Some came because they wanted to get away from the tyranny and cruelty of kings. My people are free now. They are proud to be Americans. But the Negroes were brought here by wicked men who traded in slaves. Japan is very overcrowded. The people have little land, so many Japanese came to this country because they wanted to farm. We came a little